Antarctica is often imagined as nothing more than endless ice, penguins, and freezing winds at the bottom of the world. A place so remote and so harsh that it seems separate from the struggles of everyday life. But the truth is very different. The frozen continent is one of the most important places on Earth, and what happens there in the coming decades could reshape global politics, the climate, and even the future of human civilization. This isn't just about ice and snow. Antarctica is a land with a history of quiet competitions, of hidden resources beneath its surface, and of nations maneuvering for influence. The story goes far beyond scientific exploration. It's about power, survival, and the choices humanity makes when faced with both temptation and responsibility. Back in 1977, Argentina made a bold move. A pregnant woman was flown to Antarctica with a very unusual mission: to give birth on the frozen continent. And in 1978, against all odds, Emilio Palma was born. He became the first human being ever born in Antarctica. This wasn't a random event, it was a calculated political strategy. Argentina and Chile were both laying claim to overlapping territory, and the so-called baby war was meant to strengthen those claims. In the years that followed, 10 more children were born there, 8 Argentinians and 3 Chileans. The idea was simple: if babies were born there, they could be seen as native Antarcticans, giving their nations a stronger hold on the land. Of course, the age of staking claims through babies is over. But the strategic importance of Antarctica never disappeared. Instead, it has evolved into something far more complicated. Today, countries are building research stations, deploying advanced technologies, and quietly testing the limits of what is allowed on the world's last great frontier. Antarctica is unique because, unlike the rest of the planet, it doesn't officially belong to anyone. The Antarctic Treaty, signed in 1959, was supposed to settle disputes by setting the continent aside for peace and science. Under its terms, military activity and resource extraction are forbidden. Scientific research is encouraged, and any data collected is supposed to be shared with the international community. The treaty was a landmark achievement, especially at the height of the Cold War. Dozens of nations agreed that this place would not become a battlefield or a mine. It would remain a sanctuary for knowledge. For decades, that treaty worked. Scientific cooperation flourished, discoveries about the ozone hole and climate change were made, and the continent remained free from war and heavy industry. But times are changing. The world has become more resource-hungry, more competitive, and more fragile. Nations are beginning to see Antarctica not just as a frozen desert, but as a vault of treasures and a potential stage for global rivalry. What lies beneath the ice is staggering. Around 75% of the world's fresh water is stored in the Antarctic ice sheets. If melted, it would raise global sea levels by nearly 60 meters, drowning cities and reshaping coastlines everywhere. Buried deep under the ice are mountains, ancient forests, and hundreds of lakes. There are deposits of copper, iron, uranium, gold, and even diamonds. More shocking still are estimates that beneath the continental shelf may lie up to 500 billion barrels of oil and hundreds of billions of tons of natural gas. That's second only to the Middle East in terms of reserves. And the surprises don't stop there. Beneath all that ice are hidden rivers that might actually hold clues to life beyond our planet. Imagine ecosystems that have been sealed away for millions of years, completely untouched. Then there are the giant subglacial lakes, cut off from the surface, where tiny forms of life may have adapted to pitch-black darkness and crushing pressure. It's like nature's own experiment in survival, running quietly under the ice. And it gets even wilder. The mountain ranges buried down there are about the size of the Alps, shaping how glaciers flow and crack apart. Some of these peaks haven't even been fully mapped because the ice is just too thick to see through. The ice itself is a treasure trove too, locking away layers of Earth's past. Inside those frozen cores are bubbles of air nearly 1 million years old, little time capsules that tell the story of our atmosphere. Put it all together, and Antarctica becomes way more than a frozen desert. It's a massive scientific archive and a vault of resources, both of which are now caught in the middle of growing global competition. And then there's the ocean. The waters around Antarctica are the most powerful currents in the world, acting like a conveyor belt that moves nutrients and regulates temperatures across the globe. They're also home to krill, tiny shrimp that play a massive role in the ecosystem. Krill feed whales, seals, and penguins, and they also remove millions of tons of carbon from the atmosphere every year. Without krill, the entire southern ocean food chain would collapse, and so would one of Earth's natural systems for absorbing carbon dioxide. So the continent isn't just empty ice. It's one of the richest, most strategically valuable places on the planet, and that makes it a magnet for both cooperation and conflict. China, for instance, has been expanding its presence steadily. In 2024, it opened its 5th research base, raising questions about whether these facilities are purely scientific or if they also serve other purposes. Some experts suspect that the technology at these bases could double as platforms for satellite surveillance or radar systems. There are also allegations that military personnel may have been involved, which, if true, would breach the Antarctic Treaty. China denies any such activity, insisting that its bases are for science only, but the suspicions remain. Russia, meanwhile, has made headlines by claiming to have discovered enormous oil and gas fields in areas overlapping with British claims. In 2020, it even conducted surveys to assess the oil and gas-bearing prospects of the Antarctic shelf. Papers from Moscow State University have mapped out locations of oil-containing rocks. While the treaty forbids resource extraction, these kinds of surveys suggest that Russia, at least, is keeping one eye firmly on what lies beneath the ice. The United States, once the dominant power in Antarctic science, has been scaling back in recent years due to budget cuts. Scientists warn that a reduced presence could mean losing influence over decisions about the continent's future. In Antarctica, science is currency. Countries that maintain large, active research programs hold more sway in treaty negotiations. If the US pulls back, it leaves more room for others, particularly China and Russia, to shape the rules. Other nations aren't standing still either. Australia claims 42% of Antarctica, the largest of any nation, and is wary of China's growing footprint. Norway has openly reaffirmed its territorial claims. Chile and the United Kingdom have made moves to extend their rights to surrounding waters. The treaty was supposed to freeze these disputes, but they are beginning to thaw. The pressure is building toward a critical moment in 2048. That's when countries could push to review the mining ban. To change the rules, 3/4 of treaty members would need to agree, and they'd need new regulations in place. On paper, that seems unlikely, but with rising demand for resources and growing geopolitical competition, many experts fear that nations will be tempted to test the limits, and testing is already happening. Illegal fishing has surged in recent years, with trawlers scooping up krill and even moving through feeding grounds for whales. Russia and China have vetoed proposals for new marine protected areas, blocking conservation efforts. Tourists are arriving in greater numbers too. Over 120,000 people visited in just the 2023 to 2024 season, 10 times as many as in the early 90s. With more visitors come more disturbances to fragile wildlife and ecosystems. Climate change makes all of this even more urgent. Antarctica is warming twice as fast as the global average. Since the early 2000s, it has lost trillions of tons of ice. In January 2025, an iceberg the size of Chicago broke free. The ice shelves, which act like barriers holding back glaciers, are weakening. If only a fraction of Antarctica's ice were to melt, the impact would be catastrophic. Just 10 meters of sea level rise would drown countless coastal cities. 58 meters would redraw the map of the entire world. What makes this especially worrying is that Antarctica's changes don't stay in Antarctica. Melting ice affects ocean currents, weather patterns, and food security across the globe. Scientists discovered the hole in the ozone layer there, a finding so dramatic that it spurred international action. Today, the urgency is just as great, but the politics are more complicated. The treaty system depends on trust, inspections, and consensus. But in recent years, trust has been eroding. Bloc formations have emerged in negotiations, especially since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Countries are less willing to compromise. Instead of cooperation, there's suspicion. Instead of unity, there's division. And yet, despite the risks, there's still hope. Strong international laws exist. The treaty is still in force, and most nations continue to support it. Scientists from around the world still collaborate in Antarctica, sharing data and knowledge. Proposals for permanently banning resource extraction are on the table. Conservationists are pushing for stricter protections on krill and fisheries. And new governance frameworks for tourism are being discussed, though slowly. The key question is whether the world can strengthen cooperation before it's too late. Protecting Antarctica means protecting the planet. Its ice regulates sea levels, its oceans regulate climate, and its ecosystems regulate the balance of life. Losing control of it, whether through unchecked exploitation or political conflict, would be disastrous for everyone. Antarctica may seem far away, but it is far more connected to daily life than it appears. Every rise in sea level, every shift in climate, and every decision made about its resources will ripple outward. The frozen continent is not just the end of the Earth, it is one of the keys to its future. So the next time Antarctica comes up in conversation, remember that it isn't just an empty sheet of ice at the bottom of a map. It is a place where global peace, power, and survival are all being tested. The choices made there will echo for generations to come. And that's why Antarctica is much more important than most people think. If this kind of deep dive helped reveal the hidden story of the frozen continent, consider supporting more content like this. Subscribe, share this with others who need to know what's at stake, and let's keep these conversations alive. The future of Antarctica affects us all.